Alright, so I had the worst idea that's gonna make everyone mad. I'm gonna do an RPG tier list. The first RPG list I found, we're not gonna do 800 games, but the first RPG list I found was included a lot of Western RPGs, and so this would have been a really negative time of me being like, that game sucks, I hate that game. But instead, we get to have a more cheerful list. So I came up with the things. Note the things at the top of my tier list are not games I've played because I don't want to have to look at them. Because when we scroll down to the games, I don't want to constantly be seeing games in categories I haven't played. So I thought I'd put those categories at the top. So if I hate a game you loved, take solace in the fact that I put it up top. Um, but our first category is didn't play it, hated anyway, to be compared with didn't play it, which is like I've not heard of it or I don't think I have interest. Maybe I'd like it, who knows? And games I actively want to play. So I made three categories of I haven't played this game. Then we have S tier. Now, I like to think in a 5-star rating system. So we're going to adjust it a little for this. But here's my 5-star rating system. It ends up with a lot of 3-star ratings. But then again, if you look at Amazon, everything is 1, 4, or 5-star, and most things tend to cluster in weird ways. So I don't mind if my tiers aren't the same size. But I think of it as 1 star is, to me, this has no redeeming virtues. 2 star is it has some redeeming virtue or virtues. There is something there I think has some value, but it is not enough to make a worthwhile experience. 3 stars is this is a worthwhile experience. Like, I'm glad I played this. I may never want to return to it. I may think it has lots of flaws, but I think it was worth playing for me. Doesn't mean I'd recommend it to someone else. You know, there can be things I'd give 2 stars that obviously other people love. My tastes are different than yours. My tastes are different than most people's tastes. We all have different tastes. Um, but 3 stars is like, yeah, this was worthwhile. This was like a solid enough experience or had enough things I found fun. And like 3 stars sounds like a negative score, but 3 stars could be like, yeah, I had a whole lot of fun with that game. I don't think it was very good, but I had a lot of fun with it. Or it could be, I do think it was really good, but it also didn't click with me. It did some things really well, but it had other things that really bothered me. Overall, I think it was worthwhile. I think it was really high quality, but also it wasn't worth more than that to me. So like I could put, I don't know, like some mindless nothing fun game in 3 stars, and I could also put some really like deep complex thing where I think the messages didn't hit in the end, also at 3 stars. They were both for me worthwhile, right? 4 stars is this is something special to me. Like, this is a game that has moments or things that really mean something to me. And 5 star is this is a masterpiece. This is something that is like integral to how I think of enjoying games and just things I love. Um, and just as a piece of media that just means the world to me. So I've divided into S, A, B, C, D, E, F. And what I want to do is masterpiece can stay as S, 4 star is A, but that 3.5 to 2.5 star range, that's going to be three categories. So B is like 3.5 stars. Maybe we'll relabel them. Like S is 5. And this will better divide things up so each has like similar number of things in its category. A is 4, but B is 3.5. B is stuff that is like, it's not fully in the it's special to me category, but it's like this was worthwhile and I'm really high on this. C is going to be this is worthwhile, which is like, again, a positive grade. D is this doesn't quite make it to worthwhile to me, but this is definitely one of the like of things that I'm not like pumped I played, but like I'm not like displeased I played it. Two is there's something there for me, but not enough. And F is I hate this. It really doesn't make me happy in any way. Okay, now to start scoring games and making you displeased with my rating system and my rankings and taste in games. So we're going to zoom in here. All right, this is a DS game. I don't play DS games. Um, I played some Phoenix Wright. Didn't play it. Never heard of it. R. Tonelico. I've these are what's the company called? Oh, it's gonna be so much of a pain to put everything up here. These are that company, right? I'll Google it. R. Tonelico. That company. My brain's gone. No, it's not that company. No, it is Miss America. Yeah. I've not played many of these games. Okay, what's this? Oh, that's more Arcanelica. Yeah, none of these games are games I've played. Bad for me. I've never played Ape Quest. I did not know Ape Quest was considered a JRPG. Um, I enjoy playing as the kid from Ape Quest, sometimes in PlayStation All Stars Battle Royale, which I think is genuinely pretty fun. Though the final patch they made wasn't so good, and so it kind of ended in a rough place. I know everyone hated that game and it wasn't popular, but I had way more fun with it than I've had with any Super Smash Brothers since the first one. So I'm pretty high on it. All right, what's our next set of games I haven't played? Manakemia. Yeah, this is more Nipponichi type stuff, and I've not played it. I have nothing against this. If they're good, let me know because I'm always up for good games. But before you decide I would think it's good, pay attention to my other terrible takes. And are we going to have played anything in this row? I wish you could just like click and delete a row. Um, so maybe we should have this at the bottom so it's easier to get to. Yeah, we have to have it at the bottom. Oh, and it's such a pain to move down. I can't just mash the down button. I have to find it each time. Oh, that's annoying. All right, so my clever idea to put these at the top was not so clever. This video is going great. Have I played a single game that's been listed? No. All right, sorry to people who like games I hate. They will now be listed at the bottom. And yeah, if you think my list sucks, just stop watching. That's great. Good for you. So didn't play it. I'm not going to order this. Let's just get rid of it fast. Okay. Wait, what am I looking at? No, this is more stuff I haven't played. This looks like it's kind of alphabetical. So, there is a game this row that I've played though now. Can you figure it out in advance? You probably can. Um, I really don't know anything about these games either. Like all the DS stuff just missed me. So just put this here. Bait and Kaitos. Now, I like Bait and Kaitos. I've never played Origins. Uh, I could put it in the wanna play it tier, but if I had really wanted to play it, I would have played it. Um, and then there's stuff I haven't heard of. Blue Dragon I never really wanted to play because it looked kiddier than I wanted at the time. But it's probably fine. What the hell is this? No idea. All right, we're gonna get rid of stuff until we're at a point. Oh, Smoke says I have to play Bravely Default, um, and they're really good. And yeah, okay. So we're gonna put. I zoomed in too much. You see, this was the problem with having this here. So okay, um, I've never played any of the Breath of Fires. I'd probably like to play one of them at some point, but I don't know which one, so I'll put them all here. What comes next? More Breath of Fire. Never heard of any of this. Okay, we've hit two more games I've played. Never heard of this. Does not look like a game I'd want to play, but that's okay. We're putting in the hated anyway category. I was saving that for like, I don't know, games like Skyrim that like are just, oh, this is so not for me. Um, or like Oblivion. I played more of Oblivion. Just don't understand why, why, why this is popular. Or like the other list had lots of Dark Souls games. Dark Souls is just not interesting to me. Um, and I think the people who are like get good type stuff tend to be people, as far as I can tell, that are really bad at games. Because I had a period of time where every time in college I ran into like a get good type person. Now this was before I guess the Dark Souls had come out, but I would then play them in some game and they'd just be bad at it, but they'd be better than like someone who'd never played it, but worse than anyone who was any good at it. And I thought that was very telling, and I kind of think that's the case of Dark Souls fans, which might be unfair, but oh, it might not be. Let's hate on Dark Souls fans. All right, I watched someone play Digimon World at some point, and I thought it was funny, but Digimon were never something I was interested in. So we're getting rid of games until we reach a row that is like mostly games I have played, and that seems like a great use of time, right? Just watching me scroll past all these games with just no knowledge of them. I probably should have made my own list. Ooh, Disgaea. So I've never played Disgaea past Disgaea 1. I played Disgaea 1. We'll get to opinions on that shortly. But I've not played the others. This is not really a spoiler in my opinion. I've watched someone play a bit of Hack. Didn't make me remotely interested. Though, you never know watching, right? But like the reason I got into RPGs was because I watched my cousin play Final Fantasy, a little of 7 and then a little of 8, and I went, Final Fantasy 8 looks so cool. I gotta play this. And so Final Fantasy 8 was my first RPG besides like Pokemon. All right, I've never played a Dragon Quest game. I think Dragon Quest V has been recommended to me. I think that's this one. Let's put that one in the I want to play it. Now I have to get it all the way up there. God, this is going to be a nightmare. Oh my God. Let's put that there. Um, and then maybe Dragon Quest 7 or 8 were really popular. I don't know. I get the sense they're a little grindy for me. I tend not to be super grindy on RPGs. I don't know what I'm clicking past. We're just trying to get a full row of things I've played. It's a challenging goal, but together we can do it. Not even reading what these are, just like clearly DS stuff is not stuff I did. Very much a console person. Is this Fate? No, this is not. Okay. And we've hit Final Fantasy. Okay. So this is a good place where we can actually pause and talk about things for a bit. Fate and Kaitos. One of like the first of kind of deck builder type RPGs, which are obviously now a pretty popular thing, and I've put videos of Inscription, which I don't know if it counts for that, but like most people would count like Slay the Spire as something like that. Vaguely in the vicinity. I guess it's not like a roguelike, but in the vicinity. And I think the gameplay is kind of cool. What happens on a character's turn is you've drawn a hand of cards, and each card has numbers in the different corners. And you can play your cards. Say a character can play 5 cards in a turn. You can play your cards, and each time you play a card, you draw a new one to replace it in your hand. And you can play it using any one of the 4 corners. Some cards only have numbers in 1, 2, or 3 corners, but up to 4 corners. And if you play like all the same number, they each have a number 1 through 8 in the corners. 9's at the end of the game, but call it 1 through 8. And so if you play like all 8s, you get bonus damage. Or if you make a straight, like you go 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, you get bonus damage. I think you can also do things like 2 pair or 2 3 of a kinds and other stuff. But it and it's on a timer, and it makes this fun interactivity to using your moves, where you're like trying to quickly play your hand in the best way, checking all the numbers and using them in a simple and rewarding feeling way. And I think that's really nice. The game is split into very much different worlds, somewhat like how each of Legends of Dragoon's discs is in a different place. In fact, I've compared it a lot in my life to Legend of Dragoon, where each place kind of has its separate story, building to a big plot twist that some people think is brilliant and some people think is really dumb. And I land kind of in between. I think it's kind of cool, but not that exciting. But a really big plot twist. And other than that, I think it's a pretty generic RPG story. Not particularly interestingly told. I think the characters are really weak. A lot of them, like, if you pay attention to vibes, they'll work for you. But if you pay attention to the actual things they say, I think it's kind of hard to conclude they're not all, like, bad people and idiots, is my experience with Bait and Kaitos. So I think it's, like, a pretty competent game with a really, like, a neat, interesting gameplay system. All right, we've got a... I guess maybe I should get rid of the didn't play it section and pull that up again. Bring it to the top so it's out of the way. God, this is a terrible video I'm making. Great work to me. Sorry to anyone watching. Okay, now we can see. And the want to play it tier is kind of worth seeing, but maybe we'll get rid of this tier as well, because it's for things I specifically want to be mean about, which is maybe not an important category. Okay. So Bait and Kaitos, I think, is either C or D. I think it's like a pretty competent game with something I enjoyed about it and a bunch of stuff that really annoyed me or made me like angry at it. But I think overall it's a pretty competent RPG, And if we put a bunch of other games here I like more, maybe I'll drop it down a category. But fundamentally, like, I think it was worth playing. Again, I think whoever wrote it, the people who wrote it, I think I don't like those people. I think those people I would have trouble having a conversation with and not concluding bad things about. But that's a different issue. Chrono Cross. Now, Chrono Cross is controversial. Everyone hates Chrono Cross, except the people who love Chrono Cross. I think the character collection thing has never worked for me. I've not played any Suikoden games more than like a very short. Actually, no, I beat Suikoden 4, and I played a few hours of 3, but I've never really gotten into one. And I think part of it is the characters don't feel real to me, and part of it's that we're splitting them up so much. Now, Chrono Cross, I think there's this core central cast that by focusing a bit better on Surge, Harley, Kid, Link's kind of area, but even them, aside maybe Kid, they're a little thin. I think they're a little thin. The plot is complex and interesting, and doesn't really work for me. Though I think the first time I played it, I was like, "Whoa, man!" And then the second time I played it, I was like, "No, man." Um, that was not a prepared joke. It was a terrible joke. Whatever. It rhymed. This video, it's a mess. It's 2 a.m. I decided to make this video, and then things delayed it for hours and hours, and now I'm deciding to make it anyway. Good work for me. Anyway, point is, Chrono Cross also, like, after playing it once and then being excited about it and playing it again shortly after, I have never wanted to return to it. I've always thought I have to get through that gameplay. That just doesn't seem fun to do. And I know when I played it, I basically thought outside of the very good FFs, the top tier FFs, this is one of the next best RPGs. And so it is possible it belongs A or B for me. But I also just have never wanted to play it again. And I don't think I ever will play it again. And if you asked me, do you want to play Baten Kaitos or Chrono Cross right now? I'd be like, oh, Baten Kaitos sounds more fun to play. And I think I'm going to put them in the same tier. I think Chrono Cross does some interesting, fun things. I also, one of the most hilarious super bosses I ever beat. I don't know what happened, but one of the, like, I think there are 2 super bosses in that game, and one of them's just some dude. But, like, if 2 of your characters die, his AI goes kind of weird. So, anyways, 2 of my characters died, and then he basically never attacked again, and I very slowly killed him. And, like, I tried to revive my other characters, and then he killed them, and then he stopped attacking. And I think I tried to replicate it and it didn't work, but like something happened with the AI there where he just gave up attacking. Maybe someone who knows more about Chrono Cross can explain. I thought that was pretty funny. Um, yeah, I don't know what to make of Chrono Cross. Chrono Trigger is obviously great, right? Obviously, like, fun to play, smooth and quick, very fun to look at, just like a really cheerful, fun look. Um, I'm not going to say the characters are deep, but they are well executed. And I've talked before in my FF7 playthrough about how I think there's kind of things people find cool, things people find deep, and things people find fun, right? And different people are going to have different preferences. Like, I have friends who, like, the only characters that appeal to them are ones that are like looking tough with a huge sword and all black, right? And there are other who that just doesn't look appealing at all because that doesn't look like any fun. I want everyone to be in bright pink, prancing about, right? My friend who, when we played Borderlands 2 together, insisted, or just anytime he can pick outfits in a game, he will spend forever picking whatever he thinks looks most ridiculous and will annoy me most having to see it on screen frequently. We've co-opted a lot of games, and it is a fun time, except that he'll spend an hour in like any kind of customization screen. Uh, but that said, like, Chrono Trigger just really hits the fun vibes so well. It has a few things that reach for deep vibes, and I think for actually most people, it doesn't go for it often, but when it does, it's like a pretty decent effort. I think for most people, Magus is a pretty successful character. Now, I don't think he's actually deep. I think people think he's cool, and we read being deep into things we read as cool. But I think he is cool, and he doesn't have to be deep. And it's a game that doesn't have to be deep to do some interesting, fun things. And also, like, the plot is kind of complex with all the time travel without doing time travel stuff that creates such a mess that you're like, you didn't actually figure out what you were doing. Very cleanly told, well told story. I'm gonna put it in the A tier. I could see it for me in B plus, um, because it's not something where like there's not a moment that stands out to me or like a character like I die for, right? Um, but if there is for you, I fully understand people putting it in the S tier. For me, it's A or B. I'm gonna put it A for now. Dark Cloud 1 and 2. So I loved Dark Cloud 1. I have so many memories of me and a friend going, getting the little tram thing to the bonus area, and each time we'd open a chest, we'd go gem, 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 gem as we opened it, hoping for a gem. I think it's such a like fun, bad game. It is not good. The gameplay, like I complain about Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Like obviously, Dark Cloud's gameplay is just as clunky and awkward as something like that. But no one ever mistakes Dark Cloud for a game that doesn't feel really clunky to play, and people do seem to think the Elder Scrolls games play smoothly, which I just don't understand. Um, but the Dark Cloud game is just this like very grindy, very dumb game. There's no story. The main character just sits there looking like an idiot during every scene, going, huh? Never speaks, but just looks confused. And the camera will constantly zoom in on him looking confused as people say the most unconfusing things. Um, the script is terrible, but the grindiness of the gameplay is fun because you can build up a weapon and then you can sacrifice it and attach it to another weapon, and like two-thirds of the stats come over. So you just spend forever grinding up levels on your weapons, sacrificing them onto your other weapons. And for me, it's this really rewarding gameplay loop. And I love Dark Cloud 1. That said, it's a bad game. So we're going to put it in D. Um, I don't know that I ever want to touch it again, but like the last time I touched it, I still really enjoyed it. I just enjoyed, hitting things, things level up quickly. It's kind of like one of the reasons Pokemon is so successful is because it constantly rewards you, right? You constantly learn new moves, and those moves reliably are clear improvements on what you had before, right? Now, I know like competitive Pokemon is a complicated game. But for most people, casual Pokemon is like, I got the first ice move, now we learned a new ice move. I replace it. We're not doing much of the complicated, like, setup stuff, you know, but we're just doing, like, I get better moves as I level up, and I will replace my old moves with new ones that are better and do more damage, and it's great. And I level up regularly, and sometimes I evolve. And the game just has this constantly inbuilt reward structure where you feel like you're achieving things. And Dark Cloud is a game that pulls that off for me. And then we come to Dark Cloud 2. Dark Cloud 2 is better in every single way. There is more story, it is better done, it is better written. When it's trying to be funny, it sometimes actually is funny, which Dark Cloud 1 only achieves humor when it's not trying to be funny. The gameplay is cleaned up and has some elements added. And all in all, I enjoyed it so much less. It really doesn't do much for me. I think it's like a pretty good game. And if you like Dark Cloud 1, it's worth trying. But for me, I didn't want there to be more story. Having more and better story still wasn't sufficient to be like a story I wanted to be spending time on. I just wanted to be hacking and slashing and leveling my weapons up. And for me, it provided less of that, and it was more by having more things, it obfuscated what I wanted out of it. So it's a much better game and worse for me. Disgaea. Disgaea is a good game. Disgaea is clearly just a like very competent tactical RPG. I like tactical RPGs. It did some cool stuff story wise. I remember it pulling off. Um, had some surprising ability to get emotion. I think often we kind of maybe I shouldn't treat it as surprising. Often characters that are there largely for comedic effect can pull off some of the more emotionally touching scenes. And the way I'd phrase this, I think something really important for me caring about characters is, and I'm going to say this a little stronger than I mean it, but I mean it pretty strongly. I have to believe in their joys, or I have to believe in what they care about. I don't need to have the same joys as they do, right? If they love gardening or something, I don't have to love gardening too, right? To believe in their joy. But I do have to believe in it. And a character who's going around going like, I love gardening, I'm the best at gardening, and doesn't have any like thoughts about gardening does not strike me as that's not a believable character for me, right? For me it needs to be someone with like thoughts, or it's clear why they find that joy that they do, right? And they could show it to me, they could tell it to me. I prefer showing, but I'm okay with telling. The whole you have to show, not tell, I'm okay with both. But I need either inner monologue or to see, or maybe to hear them talk about it, or to see like every time, say, something goes wrong in their life, they immediately go to guard. And it can be clear that like gives them calm. I'm not even thinking of an example. I'm just thinking, how would I make this work in a story? Right. And one type of character where you believe in their joys kind of easily is characters that are funny, right? That's a character where immediately like you understand where they're joyful and where they're looking for joy. And oftentimes in a video game you're going through tough times and they're finding joy and humor, and that can be something where it's really clear, at least in my opinion. And so I think oftentimes those characters, it's actually easier to create those moments of pathos because you already believe in a part of them that is well developed. And that means when they switch over from being comedic to dramatic, I think it can have both impact in that they're switching out, but also you believe in who they are enough that it's meaningful to you. And I remember Disgaea pulling that off pretty well. I like Disgaea. I should probably play more games in that series. I think we did click to Skyo 1, yes. I never liked the art style. The vibes of the game didn't quite click for me. Some of the standard humor didn't land for me. But I think it's a good, nicely put together game, and I respect people who like it. Final Fantasy 1. Kind of in the Dark Cloud mold of like, this is a game that is basically entirely gameplay. We can ignore the story. There's some time travel shenanigans, but it's not like good Chrono Trigger time travel shenanigans. It's like more time travel shenanigans. Um, but it does it very clean. Like every time you get to a new village, there's new spells, there's new weapons. It feels rewarding. You level up quickly. Um, I don't love the gameplay. I like to have a little more customization than like you pick your four characters and then you're basically playing the same things for the whole game. Um, without too many tools to do something interesting. It's like it's a perfectly fine experience. I'm gonna put it in 2.5 stars, but I like Dark Cloud 1 a lot more than I like FF1, so I'm gonna put it in 2 stars. Um, I don't think I'm ever gonna play it again. All right, FF2 is obviously terrible. Um, yeah, I've had moments where I wanted to defend it, but it is obviously not a good game. FF3 I played so that I would complete as many Final Fantasies as I could. It originates a lot of really cool job system stuff, but ended up feeling a lot less clean to me than FF1. And part of the reason was most DS RPGs, and like I played it on the DS, I just really miss having fast forward. And my computer I was playing it on couldn't fast forward it. And that was just a really big bummer for me because it just felt clunky and slow, and I didn't have a great time with FF3. I think it starts some really important stuff in the series. All right, slightly arranged how I was sitting, so I paused for that. I think it starts some really important stuff in the series. I think it's like an important game and a precursor of what's to come, but it is not a game I enjoyed much. I kind of think the same of FF4. I know people love FF4, and I played a bit of the after years, and it did nothing for me either. But the writing is still what I would call bad. I think the writing is still like obviously some of it's like humorously bad, like it's funny, like mistranslations are funny and lead to great moments. Um, but I think basically like takes Cecil. He comes into the game and he does a bunch of horrible things. And then he goes, "Oh no, what have I done?" And then he does like this big dramatic trial which doesn't actually have much introspection, and then he is the paladin for the rest of the game. At no point do I think he's actually interesting, right? At no point does he have interesting thoughts or perspectives on things. I liked Kane more because I found Kane cool, right? On the fun, deep, or cool spectrum, Cecil does nothing for me on any of them. Kane I thought was cool. I don't know that I'd find Kane cool now. I thought Kane was cool then. But just over and over he does the same exact thing, and there's no the plotting of that game is the whole crystal stuff. It's not for me. I also don't really like the gameplay. It's a little you're very locked into roles, and I don't know. I found that one really a slog. I think this varies a lot person to person of like which dungeons happen to feel like they just take forever to do all the fights and get through. And for me, FF4 feels that way, and for lots of people it doesn't, and that's great. I'm happy for you. For me, FF3 and 4 feel like the biggest slogs in the series. They feel like the most, this is just taking forever and I'm not doing something interesting. And I think FF3, because of its job customization, there's a better chance that if I did it again, it wouldn't feel that way. But I don't know how I would get out of that with FF4, and that's how it feels to me. And I know a lot of people love FF4, but it doesn't do anything for me on a story character level, and it feels like such a slog for me on a gameplay level. It's got some funny moments. There's every time it comes up, I mention if you Google "Ah, the power of cheese" on some site bastardly. I think it is a very funny take on FF4, and I really enjoy that. And that's the most fun I've had with FF4 is reading through that. But I don't actually like FF4. Now, FF5 is a game I've never really clicked with, but it's I think very clear it's a good game, a good RPG. It really takes the job system and does the really fun element if you can take abilities from some jobs and carry them over to others. You can pull things you've picked up from different jobs and make a really interesting loadout. I love this in FF Tactics. It's clearly like just as good on that front in FF5. Never clicked with me the same way, but you can combine things, do neat things. Unlocking jobs, I think, happens at a good, smart rate. I think the game unlocks the gameplay cleverly and well. The dialogue is fun, like it's very lively and upbeat. The jokes are good. I think everyone kind of speaks in the same voice. I think like there are a lot of lines where, the specifics of it for plot reasons, this character was gonna say it, or like talking pirate speaks a little different, but they all even when someone has their particular like way they say things different, the whole game strikes me as written in the same voice. I read this book by John Scalzi, Old Man's War, and at some point it just struck me that I thought every person spoke the same. Like John Scalzi just had this way of writing dialogue, and it's like this glib, sarcastic, fun voice. But every single character had it, from the narration to every character in the book, and that ended up making it feel really samey to me, and it started feeling a lot flatter once kind of it became clear that was happening for me. And I get that a little bit with FF5, where it feels to me like the way the voices are differentiated is like this character is apostrophes in the middle of their words. Like I'm not sure that's exactly what's happening with FF5, but a lot of times RPGs, when like making the characters different, they give them like specific vocal tics that vary. But outside of vocal tics, I felt in FF5 it has the most kind of everyone is the same cast of any FF. Um, and I like the voice of FF5. I think it's good. I think FF5 is just a good across the board game. But that was something that held it back a little for me. And in the like fun, deep, cool categories, I think it does really well on the fun one. And it doesn't really try for the others. Like Gilgamesh is great. Maybe it does try for the others and work for you. It never tried for the others for me, and thus never got there. All right, FF6. Let's talk a little about FF6. FF6, I think, is the first game in the series to have success in the deep department. Celis has a bunch of famous scenes. I think the opera is better than the island, which is, I think, the consensus. And I think is a really compelling character dealing with interesting things, right? And we both see that outwardly, and we see her introspection, and they both work for me. And I think that's a really strong character. I think the high point of FF6 for me is that Celis is the first character that really succeeds for me in the series. on the deep front. But it also has this set of fun characters. Cyan, I think, is fun. You could also argue he succeeds on the deep front, but for me, he's mostly fun. Gao amuses me. Strago amuses me. He's been my avatar on Triple Triad forever, just because he amuses me, and that picture is funny to me. Um, Locke is obviously amusing. Edgar has some good lines. There's a whole bunch in that game that's amusing. The characters going more in the cool direction, I'm not as interested in, like Shadow. But I think that's just generally true for me, that that's a category that either it appeals to me less, or I'm tricked by it into thinking they're deep rather than cool. So I end up just not valuing it as much either way. But FF6, I think, succeeds on a lot of character levels. I enjoy the plot. I think Kefka has some fun, good lines and is a good villain. Yeah, it also has like, it doesn't have the first big sacrifice in the series. That's obviously Galoof. We all know it's Galoof. I don't care if you say it's like some FF2 person. It's Galoof. But like General Leo, I think is a well handled part of the story as well. Yeah, FF6 is really great. Uh, the gameplay, you don't have that much customization of characters, but you do have constant switching up of party, and also when you get access to more members, you do get to customize your team just because you have so many members available, while still having given sufficient attention to have interesting arcs on the main cast. I think Chrono Trigger is a better game than FF6. I think I care more about Celis by a substantial margin than I care about anyone in Chrono Trigger. And in the end, for me, things usually come down to, is there a person I really care about? Is there a person I believe in their thoughts or their joys and I really care about it? And FF6, like, of every game we've talked about so far, and maybe we'll keep track of this, I think Celis is the best character. And don't think, I don't even know who second is. Um, I really like Frog in Chrono Trigger. I mean, not as much, but maybe Frog's in second. I don't love anyone from Chrono Cross. FF5, everyone's good. Probably Galoof's my favorite, but everyone's good. Maybe Gilgamesh is the best pick there. Bait and Kaitos, no, I hate the cast. I really, the writing makes me just hate everyone. Um, yeah, I think my favorite character so far by far is Celis. I think second is Frog, and third is maybe Galoof. But I think Chrono Trigger is enough better overall as a game. I'm gonna keep it ahead, and I think I'd rather play it, and that's pretty important. Um, for a long time, my favorite games were kind of what I felt deepest about, and now there's a lot of that obviously, but there's also like, what would I rather play? And if I look at this list, what if you told me you have to go play one of these games? Like, I'm gonna go play Chrono Trigger because Chrono Trigger is a great time. So that's what I'm gonna do. Um, okay, FF7 is S tier, obviously. I did my playthrough of FF7. I've talked a lot about FF7. It was not always my favorite game. FF8 introduced me to FF. I played FF7 afterwards, and I was like, no, FF8 is better. It took me about a decade to move off that, but once I did, I moved pretty far that direction. I'm not sure if FF7 is my favorite RPG ever, but it is in my top two, and it may well be. But I've talked a lot about it in the past. So we're going to pretend we haven't listed that, and I'm going to keep track of who my favorite characters are. My current top three is Celis, Frog, Galoof. Who are yours? All right, FF10-2 is funny to list before FF10. I don't think FF10-2 is very good. I think the plot is one of those plots that says, like, the threat to the last game, well, actually, there was an even bigger threat that could have defeated it easily. And I don't know. That always feels so tacked on, and I don't think it was pulled off. And the Shu Yin Len stuff doesn't work for me. And I like the changes in Yuna. I think that's a really interesting character arc. I think going from being this, like, mostly, though very importantly, not entirely, but mostly dutiful and subdued, and here is my role, but with some like surprising amount of passion for no, this is the right understanding of it. Um, that I actually think FF10 messes up a little. But I think going from that to this, my death is no longer hanging over my head. These tragic things have happened, but I get to live in this world now and I'm going to have fun is not a ridiculous trajectory, and I think is an interesting one. I don't think FF102 really pulls it off. I think saying that it like that kind of gives it more credit than it deserves because it goes from one to the other without giving you much like thought about it. It just sort of hops there and suddenly you're there. I think Pain is a horrible character. I think FFs really, not as much as some other RPGs, but sometimes let their female characters down. And specifically when they try to write the hardened female characters, I think they just kind of make them mean. And when they write the hardened male characters, the kind of hardened stuff is more assumed because it's gendered. So they feel they don't have to prove that part and they can make them pleasanter. And with the women, they kind of, I think they push it too much, just mean. And I don't like Pain. I like Riku, but she's much more fun for me in FF10. So FF10 too, on a character front, I think Yuna could have been really interesting, but it's kind of a bummer. The story stuff doesn't work for me, but the gameplay is fun and good, and not really such that I want to return to it anytime soon, but it is definitely fun and good. Um, hmm, I might put it too low here, but I think that's where I want it right now. You could definitely like, and when I say you can have it wherever you want. But a you that is similar to me, like this is the lowest I could put it. You could definitely like be similar to my taste and my opinion on it, and put it at 3 star. And if you really love the gameplay, you could get it up to 3.5, or like if you thought it was the best gameplay ever, 4. But that's probably where I'd put it. Okay, FF11, let's get rid of. I don't care about MMOs. Um, uh, I never played the FF12 spin-off, and I never wanted to. I also never played Lightning Returns, and I don't want to. That's a spoiler. Um, this is FF14. I have no interest in MMOs, just not a genre for me. Um, Now, is this FF14? I don't even know what modern FFs look like. Let's get rid of that. And yeah, I didn't do FF15. Um, and I kind of, well, let's do FF13 next. Let's talk about FF13. I guess we should get through 12. I don't like 12. I think Balthier is good. I think he's well executed, interesting. I think he's a pretty well rounded character. Like, he's fun. He ends up being connected to the plot. A lot of characters in that game don't feel connected to the plot. Like, Fawn and Pinello feel completely irrelevant to the plot. Fran is has her own secondary plot, but is basically there to be Balthier's friend. But not even Balthier's friend that he like that draws in the interesting stuff out of him, in my opinion. So like I think she's a waste of a character. So the characters that feel connected to the plot are Balthier, Ash, and Bosch, right? And I think those are the three interesting characters. Ash, I think they screw up. I think the best scene in the game is Ash being like, honor is what's important, and Bosch being like, if I could give up my honor to save a single person, I would do so. And he's someone where, because of his story to that point, that's believable from him, and I think it's a compelling good point. That's not the exact line. I haven't played FF12 in forever. I don't like FF12, but I think it's a really strong thing to say. I think sometimes in games and in stories and in real life, people will treat honor as if it's the most important thing, but consequences are the most important thing. I am a consequentialist. And going, well, I can't do this because it would besmirch my honor when the thing is a thing that should and is good to have done. No, she was wrong and Bosch was right, and it's a really strong part of the game. The problem is her character arc never she obviously comes in very angry and cold to things, and this is what needs to be done, and I am doing that. And her arc moves her a bit from that, but it sets up these interesting scenes and never has her reach anywhere in regards to those scenes. So where the writing is good, there is not payoff. I think as a kind of example of this, the game Tomb Raider, the reboot of Tomb Raider, there's a scene in the middle of the game talking to Lara that I think is a really good scene where someone says to her, she says, I've sacrificed. And they say, no, you have lost, but you have never sacrificed, right? You have had times where you've lost things, but you've never had to give something up to do what is right or to get something more important, right? Loss is different from sacrifice, and you have lost, but you have not sacrificed. And if you reach the end of that game, it's very clearly set up, making it look like she will have to sacrifice something. And instead, she simply doesn't, and everything turns out great. And so it sets up this interesting situation for her, this thing that she has experienced part of this and mistaken it for something else. And then when we get around to it, she never has to go through the other thing. So it has this interesting thought, this thought I really enjoyed and thought was compelling and was waiting to see how it paid off. And then it never got there. And I think all of the interesting thoughts in FF12, it does not have the conviction or thought to pull off. So for me, Ash ends up being a failure of a character. Bosch is better because he sets up some of those things, but he's not there to pay them off. Um, and Balthier is the best character from the game, but not a contender for one of our best characters so far. Um, I also don't really enjoy the gameplay at all. So I'm tempted to put it here. I think that's a little mean. I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. I do remember seeing the opening to the game. There's a few times I've said this in history and playing games. The opening of Last of Us was another one I thought this and was also disappointed. Um, After the opening hour or two of FF12, I thought it had a chance to be one of my favorite games ever, if not my favorite game ever. Um, the first time. I would not feel that way now going through the opening again. But I thought this really felt like something special. And then I played the next 40, 50 hours, and it no longer felt that way. So if you like FF12, congrats to you. I'm glad people get to enjoy stuff I don't, but it was a really frustrating experience for me on both the gameplay and story front. Which brings us to FF13, which I like more than FF12. Okay, I have to move FF10 too. I like FF10 too more than I like FF13 or 12. I like FF13 more than I like FF12. Um, the gameplay was fun. I enjoyed it. It felt fast paced in an FF10-2 style way. And that's worth a lot. Like, if you ask me to pick up a game in the C or D tier, I would strongly consider FF13 because it might have my favorite gameplay of any game in these sections. I also think I don't mind the linearity at all. I don't mind linear games. If you have a story to tell, you can tell it linearly. I don't want to get distracted from 10 hours and lose the flow of the story. If you want to control the pace of the story and you can do so well, great. Um, if you can keep up the pace of the story while doing more open stuff, that's also great. But I tend to prefer in my RPGs more linear direction. And FF13 is obviously very linear, but like not enough to bother me. Um, Except that I don't like the cast. I think the cast is bad. I think the best character is either Saz or Fang, who are both fine, and both have compelling moments. Though Fang's sort of momentary betrayal, I'm only okay with because I hate the rest of the party so much that I like don't mind shit like that. But man, Hope gets a redemption arc, but it was insufferable for me and was not pulled off when he gets the arc. Vanilla's just was annoying for me. I do love the idea that the land down under is Australia. Um, that they talk about this land being hell, and it is the land literally under them, and all of them have Australian accents. I find that very funny. but that's kind of unintentional. Um, I really despise lightning. Again, the attempts to do, I think, strong women end up with much weaker people than attempts to do complex characters. And they don't screw up the men in this direction as well as much, but I think that's because they're sexist. And so like with the men, they assume you'll find them cool and don't have to do so much work to get you there. And because they're not constantly going, this person is cool at you, they have stuff that I can enjoy. And they have this run from FF10-2 to FF13 of Pain, Ash, Lightning that just that don't work for me. Like basically, our introduction to Lightning is like someone's grieving over his presumed dead girlfriend, who's her sister, and she sticks a sword to his throat and goes, "Get the fuck over it, let's move." And this is just so unlikable. And I know it's presented in part as a scene to show you what her flaws are, but it's also presented in a way to make her look cool. Both those presentations are very clearly happening. It is trying to sell both those things at once, but to different audiences of the game. Very clearly. Like, I think indisputably. And I don't think it pulled off the arc of one of them. So I think in the end, what it's trying to do is it's trying for that scene to be cool, and it's not cool. It's bad, and I know it's the start of a character's arc, but they don't pull off the arcs. They really just they don't. There's a whole run starting with FF10-2 of them not pulling off arcs, um, and I think it's largely a script problem. Um, So yeah, FF13 is a bummer for me. FF13 2 is what killed the series for me. I thought there was nothing there. I didn't like um, Pokemoning the gameplay. Um, for me, it made it a kind of collector thing that I just didn't want to be playing in a game I wasn't enjoying. I liked FF13's more linear and directed gameplay. And in a game where I was disliking the story and stuff so much. Incidentally, why haven't we shit on Snow yet? Snow is the worst. Snow is the worst. Snow is like probably even worse than Hope, worse than Lightning. Snow is terrible. It doesn't mean it's okay to be like, I'll kill you, but Snow is terrible. And FF13 too is, fair amount of snow. Anyway, I don't like FF13 too. This is why I have not played any FF since then. So we should get rid of this FF because I have not played it. And this is why I have no interest in Lightning Returns, is because 13.2 was such a miserable time for me. FF10 is an incredible game. FF10, I think, is maybe the best all-around game. Like, if you know those reviews of RPGs that would be like story, characters, in-battle gameplay, out-of-battle gameplay, side quests, music, graphics, right? And give a score for each category. If I was scoring all of these games in each category, and the final score for each game was the lowest score it got in any category, I would have FF10, I think, is the top game. I think across the board for me, it is the most consistently great game. Um, I think Waka's arc is great and is pulled off. I think Riku is one of those characters that pulls off by being funny and enjoyable. Her moments of pathos are stronger, and I think the Albed's actions around summoners and her actions where she is conflicted, wanting to support people but stop people at the same time, is a really interesting position for her to be in the story. I think Waka and Riku are the two best characters in FF10. I know that's a kind of hot take, but I think Yuna has some strength that's interesting too. I think Titus, as the person unfamiliar with this world he's thrown into, sure, he's pretty dumb in a lot of spots, but I think he actually is a pretty good viewpoint to see this through. And I think his story ends up being kind of interesting, and I think his arc is basically pulled off. Orin was by far my favorite character the first time playing. Now I would have him as a very strong third best character. If we were ignoring FF7 right now, my top three characters at this point, I think would still be Celis, coming into FF10, would be Celis, Frog, Maybe Balthier passes Galoof. I do like Balthier quite a bit. But let's say Galoof because I'm just such a FF12 hater. If those were my top three, like it's basically all replaced by FF10. Like maybe Celis, I think holds her spot, but second through fourth would be FF10, or like first, second, and fourth. I'm not sure exactly where Celis would fall, but now it's just I think the best three FF10 characters, which for me are Waka, Riku, and Orin. Um, Even Lulu, I think, is a pretty interesting character. One thing FF10 does that is remarkable is outside of Kamari, every character in your party has an interesting and distinct relationship with every other character in your party. There are scenes where they interact, there are scenes where you see how they behave around each other. It is so well done on that front. Compared to something like FF8, which we haven't gotten to or talked about, where everyone has conversations with Squall, and then they have maybe one other person in the party they talk to, right? There's Selphie and Irvine. There's well, that might be the only one. I mean, I'm sure there's other examples. There's like a little bit with Zell and Quistis, right? But there's really not much. It is a very Squall-centric game where the cast exists basically insofar as they relate to Squall. FF10 is not like that. FF10 is this really much, and by having more relationships, the characters are better fleshed out as characters. And I think it is remarkably well done. And I think the graphics to FF10 are just spectacular for their time. Nice design choices too. It's usually fun to look at. I think the gameplay for a CTB system is just really nice. Being able to see the turn order and manipulate it. It's one of the very few RPGs. The Shin Megami Tensei games do this well, but many RPGs don't. Where if you think about what are the elements of fighting, there's damage. Almost every game, damage matters, and you can get through the game only caring about damage. There's buffs and debuffs. Often in FFs, haste matters, and maybe like other stuff matters in niche spots, but mostly you don't use them. FF10, because of its weapon system, incorporates them more generally into gameplay in a way that I think works really well. And you have fights like the Seymour fight that show off Null Blaze. Almost every move has some use. Speaking of which, status effects have use. You know, the Seymour fights, if you poison him, are a whole lot easier. And there's like putting Dark on that boss where they're trying to show you about status effects. There's there's four categories of stuff: damage, buffs and debuffs, status effects, and elemental stuff. And FF10 does a pretty good job on all four categories. It focuses more on damage, as every game does, and elemental stuff, but it does pretty well in the other two as well. And I think that just makes it a more fun and interesting game to make decisions in than most games. The bosses are well done, forcing you to use your tools. That you can do no sphere grids shows how powerful some of the tools you have are. I love FF10. FF10 is really good. I'm now going to make my biggest complaint about FF10. I think this is such a minor, small complaint. I think Yuna saying it's worth sacrificing the summoner, even if it's just 5 years of peace for that time, for people feeling comfort and safety and security, is really important and true. I think the scenes where they're like, we have to kill Unalesca because this is false hope, are bad and wrong. Now, Unalesca attacks us like that fight had to happen as it's set up. She does something wrong as well. But the lines the characters say around it, I think, are bad and wrong and misunderstand some of the strength that Yuna has earlier in the game. Because it is true that it is false hope, and it is also true that that time matters and is wonderful, and that it's so important, even if you can only grant people a few years of comfort and stability, that matters so much, even if that time is built on a hope that this may be forever and it isn't. And so I think it has a compelling theme there that it screws up, but this is nowhere near how badly 12 and 13 screw up their themes and writing. But that is the part of FF10 that bothers me on every play now. Is I think at the moment in the game where your characters go, we have figured it out, we are now doing the right thing, they do the thing that is most morally wrong of anything they do, and the game doesn't recognize it. And that really throws off the arc for me. But FF10 is obviously great. Crisis Core. I think the FF7 spin offs are pretty universally bad. Wait, why do we have FF7 again? I guess we'll put both FF7s in. Is one of them the PC version? Oh, it's the FF7 remake. Oh, no, I hate it. I don't like FF7 spin off stuff. I, Crisis Core, all right, here's my take on Zack. Crisis Core does something really interesting with Zack, but it doesn't realize it's doing it. I think Zack in Crisis Core is appalling, annoying, um, way too excited about combat. Yes, he has an arc off this, but I think this is important. I think Zack sucks. Now, he has an arc to sucking less that may work better for you than it did for me. Again, basically, after FF10, I think no arcs that Final Fantasy has done have succeeded. So this was in the mold. And maybe, when did Crisis Core come out? Crisis Core can't be before 10. It's got to be like '04 or something. It's '07. Yeah, way after. Okay. Um, Basically, after 2001, I think not a single FF arc was pulled off except Balthier. Balthier the exception. Shout out to Balthier. Maybe FF12 deserves to be higher. So I think they just lost the ability to write character arcs. So that doesn't work for me. But the important thing is Zack sucks, which I think is fascinating about Cloud. And I talk about this a bunch in my playthrough of FF7. But Cloud sees Zack and thinks he's really cool. And the thing is, Zack is a loser. And this is so important for telling us about Cloud. Because Cloud was so desperate to find people that were cool and that he could be cool like them that he could see someone like Zack who sucks and think this person's really cool and meld in their head with them so they can be cool too. I think that's fascinating. So I think Crisis Core added something really interesting, but I'm the only person who took this from that, and no one else does, so, ignore as you will. I love FF8. Obviously, FF8 means the world to me. Without FF8, I wouldn't have Triple Triad, which means the world to me. But FF8 is not a masterpiece. I love Squall. I think he is obviously the most introspective character FF8 has had, but he has so many thoughts that are interesting. Some of them are a little generic. Like his anti-pacifism arguments are very generic anti-pacifism arguments, and I don't think very interesting ones. Um, but like his freaking out at people talking about Cypher in the past tense, his inability to handle someone not being there and able to kind of shape how people see them and who they are, and that freaking him out so much. People call that scene stupid. I think it's really interesting. And I think there's a lot of thoughts Squall has that are really interesting. He is very much the centerpiece of the game in a way that no other FF lead is, because the rest of the cast is relatively thin. They are not given many interactions outside of him, and their interactions are limited to kind of how Squall can relate to them, which makes the rest of the cast fairly weak. Which means if we're talking about best characters so far, in my opinion, right, we have Celis from FF6. Maybe we have characters like Frog or some favorites from some others. We have a bunch from FF10. From FF8, I think it's really hard to argue anyone is very fully fleshed out, except Squall. Except FF8's good enough, there are some exceptions to that. I love Laguna. I think Laguna is great and really well pulled off. All his scenes are great. He is, oh, so good. That Cypher's gunblade holding style is based on Laguna. Chef's kiss. Excellent work. Um, yeah. So for me, FF8 Laguna is a fantastic character, and if we had our top 6 characters so far, Squall and Laguna are there. I also think Rinoa is pulled off. That's more controversial. I think they succeed with her as a character, and she has some interesting thoughts and inclusion in the story. I know that one's controversial. I wouldn't have her quite in this top group, but she wouldn't be that far outside it. I also do enjoy Cypher. I understand there's people who love him. Looking at you, Deli. There's also people that think this is like the most one-note character FF has had in a while. I think that's also kind of true, but I really enjoy his one note. Good job, Cypher. But I think the best three characters from FF8 are Squall, Laguna, and Rhinoa. And they are sort of the central three, so that might not be that hot a take, but I think those three are really well pulled off. And I know people are down on Rhinoa. I'm really high on Rhinoa. I think she is a successfully pulled off character. So if we're ignoring FF7, um, Squall, Laguna, Waka, Riku, Orin, Celis. And then probably characters like Frog, Rhinoa, Galoof, Balthier are next for me. FF9 is obviously also great. Every time I play FF9, I don't like it as much as I want to. I keep wanting to think it's closer for me to FF8 and 10, and it keeps moving further from that. I wonder if I'd like Chrono Trigger more than it nowadays. I think 8 and 10 are pretty clearly ahead of 9, Chrono Trigger, and 6 for me. So maybe I should drop these three down here. But that's no, these are wonderful games. Um, but there's a gap here, and maybe we'll separate this later. FF9's great. The cast is really good. Freya's kind of underserved. Amaranth's not really there, but Aiko's really funny and good. I like Aiko a lot. Queen is fine for like the fun mascot character. Queen is fine. Steiner's fun. Garnet has an arc that is pretty good. Vivi has a really good arc. Zidane has a pretty good arc. I think some of the scenes when we go to the other world are a little messy for him. Um, his swing is not the most convincing, and then he comes back so quickly it doesn't feel that impactful. But everything else about his arc I think is pretty good. I don't like his pervy stuff. Mostly FFs avoid being like ragingly sexist, which is like pretty common in other RPGs at the time. Um, FF9 has some flaws there. Uh, yeah, I love Aiko. Aiko's really underrated. I think Kuja's a great villain, really is good presence, good place in the story. FF9's gameplay is pretty fun. It's a little slower than some other FFs, which feels a little weird. It feels to me like it should be faster. I wish it was a little faster paced in combat. The ATB feels notably slower. Um, Overdrive probably wasn't the greatest choice, but it's fine. Yeah, FF9's really, really good. Really good all around, and it's from a kind of era of storytelling I like a little more than Chrono Trigger and FF6's, but I would completely understand that someone that was like Chrono Trigger and FF6 are better than FF8, 10, and 9. For me, they're kind of like, I like the PS1 era more than the SNES era. So, this is my order. Um, but if you like the SNES era more than the PS1 era, good for you. I gotta go to bed. What the hell is this? I have no idea what that is. All right. I never played Crystal Chronicles. Let's look for other stuff. I didn't get far in Mystic Quest. I never played Tactics A2. Uh, Tactics Advanced. Nah, let's put it here. I almost got through it. I should have liked it more than I did. I don't know what went wrong there. Probably story stuff. FF Tactics is wonderful. It's going to be our second game in S tier. It's probably my third favorite game ever at this point. I got to finish my FF Tactics playthrough. I really lost track of that. I got distracted, didn't finish it. I love doing challenge runs. The story works well for me. I don't have characters I love. There's no one from it who is close to my top list, which honestly probably does mean it's here. I think it's closer for me to FF8 than it is to FF7, but it's wonderful. I love it. I love the gameplay, the customization, the ability to combine jobs. That works so well for me. I really like the story. I don't love how it's told. I gotta play War of the Lions someday because, like, I think, I mean, I do like how it's told, but I think fixing some scripting issues might do magical things with it. But I suspect it's kind of too honest a remake to cover what I want. Shadow Dragon I tried and was kind of but Blazing Sword and Sacred Stones I thought were great. Let's just put this here so we can move them up in a sec. I didn't like Fire Emblem 6. Is this 6? This is probably 6. 6 was kind of a dud for me, but 8 I think was really solid, and 7 I think was just excellent, just fun. The dialogue's all fun, nicely done. No, the story's nothing to great shakes. Obviously, none of my favorite characters, but I just had a really good time. It was a strategy RPG that worked really well for me, and I think all the writing was good and fun. I liked Seven's linearity a little more than Eight's. Again, I have a somewhat linear bias. Um, Skimming. I never played a front mission. I'd like to play a front mission someday. If those are good, let me know. I think they might be a little sci-fier than I want from my RPGs. Generally okay with sci-fi. I started Golden Sun a couple times and it just wasn't working for me. Never played Soul Blazer. I never played much of Grandia 1, but I like Grandia 2 quite a bit. I played Grandia 2 many times. That's got to be somewhere in C tier. It's not like that good. You've got this like sarcastic, rude lead that is like entertaining and fun, and it works for me. Not any great characters. The story does pretty predictable but not unpleasant things. It's fine to be predictable. Um, it's a very like by numbers RPG in many ways, except that the gameplay is fantastic. The gameplay's so good. Uh, a bar fills partly, like three quarters, and then for the last quarter, you put in a command and the last quarter fills. But during that last quarter, characters can be knocked out of things, which means opponents can. So if you time your moves correct, you can counter knock back the enemy from being in that space, and their bar is sent back not to the full beginning but close. But you can effectively stun lock bosses by timing your cancels on their moves correctly, and it's just really fun to do well. And yeah, it's just really one of those games that like makes you feel like it's turn based. You know, it pauses so you can pick your actions, but it feels fun and fast paced, and it feels like you're making great decisions, even if they're not that hard. It just really rewarding feeling. Regular like level ups on moves and stuff, and upgrades of moves. Everything they did gameplay wise, I think is really good. I'd probably really enjoy Grandia 1 and Grandia 3 and Grandia Extreme if I ever played them. Shout out to Grandia. How long have we been going? Hour 12. I don't like Kingdom Hearts. We'll just leave it there. Kudelka, I gotta play someday. Because I love Shadow Hearts. But the only Kingdom Hearts I've played is Kingdom Hearts 1. And so one problem I have is I like extended universes. I really dislike Lord of the Rings. I think I probably dislike it more than I should, but I should dislike it. If it wasn't that popular, I'd only dislike it a bit, and instead I dislike it a lot. But I think like Lord of the Rings is like in a bunch of ways pretty bad. Star Wars doesn't have appeal to me, and what's other things of this ilk? I guess like Marvel now is kind of the extended universe is big. None of this, none of these extended universes am I interested in, except I like the feeling of an extended universe where you could explore the crannies of something forever. So when you run across a person interested in one of these things, I find it entertaining to hear them like describe things or like come up with a tier list of who's the most powerful being in the universe or compare things in it. Because it just feels so extensive, even if it's like a lot of repeated archetypes or whatever. I like the like I don't even care about the lore. I just like that there is the lore, if that makes any sense. And Kingdom Hearts is a series that is so messily convoluted that it has wild and ridiculous and nonsensical lore, and I like that. And for me, that is its redeeming value. I think Kingdom Hearts very clearly got worse once it invented the Cloak Brigade, but for me, the nonsense that is the Cloak Brigade and having the same villain be like the top six villains in the series is just one guy of like incarnations through the nonsense that is Kingdom Hearts. To me, that's pretty funny to explore and is actually the strength of the series, even as I think that's when it went convoluted. And my sense is Kingdom Hearts 1 is probably the best actual, like, coherent story in game. But I'm not a Disney person. For me, this was kind of just not a good experience. And I think the gameplay is pretty clunky in one. And in the others, it may be improved, but I will never get there because it's just, it's not for me. I'm going to skip Shadow Hearts for a sec. I watched all of Last Story, so I think I can rate Last Story. And it's another one where, like, a big part for me is whether I think the writers are decent, and I don't really think they were. Um, looks kind of neat. Looks a little clunky to play, but it never made me want to play it. But it might deserve better than this. Um, but but yeah, um, I'm glad I didn't buy it. Legend of Dragoon. Legend of Dragoon. It was funny. I had a conversation with the Piggy Man about Legend of Dragoon and Bait and Kaitos. It's 3 o'clock. I gotta go to sleep. And we basically talked about them, and we were talking about how like Legend of Dragoon, it does so many so generic choices. It's trying so hard to be cool with the Dragoon stuff, and it just isn't doing much there. I don't remember the whole conversation. I don't want to put words in his mouth. And Bait and Kaitos, we were like, yeah, this is such a cool system of like gameplay that really worked for us. And then at the end, we were both like, yeah, but Legend of Dragoon's obviously a better game. And Legend of Dragoon is obviously a better game. Like, it just so clearly is a better constructed, put together thing. I don't like the cast very much. I do like Rose. I think they pull off Rose. Um, I think Rose behaving how she does, given the plot around her, works and makes sense. And I thought she worked as a more reserved, cold character, which is clearly rare for me to like. But again, everything was better done in the PS1 era. There's something about going to voices that made those characters not continue working, I think. But also, I think they were worse done. I think Rose is pretty good. I think Lovitz is really good until you actually read his dialogue, and then you're like, this isn't as fun as it is made out to be. Not a huge fan of Lovitz. I wish I was, but eh. Albert's okay. I know people are pissed because like Lovitz forever, but like Lovitz isn't as good as you think. This is a game that suffers from like the characters are so rampantly sexist that they're obviously assholes, and that sucks. Um, but I think, and like the stories, it's fine. It works. It all works. The game works. It's a good RPG. It's not a great RPG. I don't care about anyone in the cast. Who's my favorite character? Like Hashel or Maru or something. Like, oh no, it's probably Rose. But like, it's it's it might be the best combination of like if you had a score in these two categories, it has the best total score. Good game, and everything I say about it is negative. It is a good game. I don't think it's much more than that, but it's a good game. And almost everything that comes to mind for it, I like additions. Almost everything that comes to mind for me is like the reasons it's not a great game. But it is a good game, and it probably shouldn't be in the same tier as Bait and Kaitos because it is a better game. Um, I kind of like this tier though. This is games, yeah. This is yeah. Legend of Dragoon's fine. I'd really love to finish up. Secret of Mana, I really like. I didn't like Secret of Mana 2, but we'll just it didn't click for me. I couldn't get the game to do what I wanted. Like it just the controls felt really like shifty weird. But Secret of Mana, I think, is just like a fun, solid experience. Like simple but pleasant gameplay, cheerful colors. Just enjoyed it. I like Secret of Mana. There are times where I would have put it here because I'd be like, "There's nothing there." But there are other times where I'd be just like, "That's fun," and you can pick it up and play it with a friend too. It's a fun game. I like it. Every game in this category is deeper and more interesting in some ways, but who cares? I have a good time every time I play Secret of Mana. And I cannot say that about everything here. Good for Secret of Mana. Good game. Shout out to Secret of Mana. I never got into the Mario RPGs. I've tried Seven Stars, never got into it. Sure, there's stuff here I've played, but I'm forgetting. Okay, we get into the SMTs. Oh, that's a long discussion. So what do we have left? We have SMT, um, Pokemon, if we want to talk about Pokemon. Pokemon's good at what it does. It's very good at what it does. Um, Shadow Hearts, SMT, Pokemon, Star Ocean. Yeah, there's going to be a bunch of things to discuss. Trails, Tales of, Xenosaga, Xenogears. Yeah, there's no way I'm finishing this night. Wait, you already had Shadow Hearts. So the reason this is so many is because you just are listing things again. Like here's Shadow Hearts and Kudelka again. That's bad work. Valkyrie Profile too. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff left to talk about. We will split this into 2 videos, and I will go to bed because it's way too late. Bad job to me. Um, okay, how's our list? Great S tier, perfect S tier. No one who watches this would ever disagree. Great A tier. This one is probably closer to these than these, but I'm gonna put it there for now because I think Fire Emblem 7. Like, I definitely like FF6 a lot more, but I think I like it significantly more than anything here. So that seems a good cut. Yeah, this looks good. This looks good. Let's be nice today. What the hell is this? Oh, this is Fire Emblem 6. Yeah, it's just too hard. Like, you just move forward and then 5 enemies spawn behind you and insta-kill you. Like, just too much of a pain to figure out. Not worth the time. I don't actually know if this is Fire Emblem 6, but it was right next to the other two, so I put it here. Uh, yeah. This list is perfect, and if you have a problem with it, good for you, honestly. Um, and to finish up on my favorite characters so far, so like my actual favorites are Cloud, Tifa, and then Barrett not far behind. But let's ban Cloud and Tifa. And let's not do antagonists for now. So my top 10 would be something like Barrett, Squall, Laguna, Barrett, Squall, Laguna, Waka, Riku, Orin. That's 6. Vivi. Everyone loves Vivi. 7. Celis is 8. So I think a clear top 8, and then who gets in next? I don't think another FF7 character I have quite that high. Probably Frog and Balthier are my next favorite. I just enjoy Frog. Frog's good. Uh, Frog is a better Scion in some ways, many ways. Uh, Probably Frog and Balthier. Just looking. Uh, I mean, I love everyone in Fire Emblem 7. I like everyone in Fire Emblem 7. I don't love anyone. Grandia is just not well written enough to have great characters. Disgaea, I don't remember well enough. FF5 doesn't have quite enough of a standout. Maybe Galoof is close. Legend of Dragoon cast is not very good. Bait and Kaido's cast is actively bad. And if I loved characters in any of these games, they'd be higher on the list. Yeah. All right. I stand by everything I said. I was thoroughly awake for this video. Good night.